How you doing, guys? Eric from worldwasteland.com. And yes, the title is slightly hyperbolic, but I have an interesting story from a recent camping trip I went on that, as always, there's some preparedness and survival lessons from. And it wasn't me or one of my stalwart companions that risked death because we are way too squared away. But it just goes to show you how a lot of the skills that I would consider to be just absolute 101 stuff, a lot of people don't have, and in this particular case it is fire starting. So I have a couple friends that we've gone to a lot of different national parks across the US. I've actually been to 47 of the 50 states and a lot of the national parks. Actually there's quite a few national parks. I've only actually been to I think we counted. I think I've been to 15 or 16 of them, and there's quite a few if you count all the smaller ones. But I still have yet to go to Alaska, Hawaii, or North Dakota. I've been to South Dakota a couple times, and somehow I've just never dipped up into North Dakota. And I don't count a state if I've just driven through it. I have to do at least one thing there other than just an airport, a gas station, or something like that. So on this particular trip, we were spending a few nights in Sedona at a campground, and it was really cold. You know, there was snow on the ground in the campground. It was just hovering right around freezing, which is probably actually a little worse in most situations than being right under freezing, because there's snow that'll melt and refreeze, and then it might be kind of rain, might be kind of snow, that kind of thing. So we did good research and picked a campground. Now these are not, most of these campgrounds we go to are just so we can be really close to the parks and the hiking trails and stuff. It's not because we're doing particularly aggressive backwoods camping. Almost always these are, the car sitting right there. There's usually a bathroom facility, not usually a shower, but there's usually some kind of vault toilet or a porta-john or whatever you want to call them. So this is not, I'm not trying to get the impression that we do these amazing camping trips, which I have done a little bit of true off-grid camping in the past, and I do enjoy it, but these type of trips are to go to the parks and just be cheaply in the park, ready, right there near the trails and all that, have a little bit of fun, make a campfire, whatever. So in this one, it was really cold, obviously. It was just hovering around freezing, and there's a bunch of, I'll show you some of the gear that I brought. There's some of the things that I almost always bring, a few new things that I tested out. And one of the things I was definitely happy about was my Wiggy sleeping bag, because like I said, it was around 32 to 35 degrees overnight, and I needed that. You need a good sleeping bag, because I just have a little solo tent, and I need to upgrade to a 2 or 3, even 3-person tent, because the guys I travel with, it's funny because one guy has a 2-person tent, one guy has a 3-person tent, and so we have a 1, 2, and a 3-person tent all in the campground or the campsite, and the solo tent is great. It's a Eureka Solo, and I've never had any issues with it. It's just very small, and if you're really doing truly backpacking style, that might make a difference. But when it comes to what we're doing for most of these trips, their tents are really not that much bigger and not that much heavier, and they're being transported around in the car most of the time anyway, and it gives you a lot more room to pull gear inside the tent, and more importantly to change and do all sorts of other stuff in the tent, where I can't really do that in the Solo. It's kind of like a pod. Changing in there is kind of like trying to change in your car or something, so it's really kind of a pain in the butt, especially as I'm getting old and it was all cold. Definitely need a bigger tent. I'll keep that one, but I want a 2 or 3-person tent for this type of camping trip. And of course, as always, links to all the gear I mentioned will be in the description. But on this fateful day, this was I think it was the first night. We spent 2 nights there. The first night we had set up a fire, and some dude comes over, and he has this log, and this is always from one of the campsites next to us, and he has a full-size log, a quarter piece of wood, and it has a big charred spot on it. And I'm pretty sure he'd been trying to light it directly, and he was like, "Bro, we forgot our lighter fluid. Can we borrow some of yours?" And I was like, "Oh, we don't have lighter fluid." I was like, because we already had our fire going, roaring, and I was like, I think I have some accelerant, and I'd actually never used this stuff before, but I brought along this that I got from a battle box. It's called Hot Snot. It's called fire lube in a tube, and it's just a goop, which was pretty useful, because I gave him I just squirted out a ton of it on half this tube on the log for him, and I was like, that should do it. I was like, just use some small pieces on there and you should be good. And because my suspicion was that they were just holding a lighter under this big ass log trying to get it started. And so he leaves, oh thanks bro, he leaves. And so I'm looking out of the corner of my eye, and I'm for the next hour, I'm there's a lot of movement over there, and I don't see a lot of flames. So I'm like, we're definitely gonna hear from this guy again. And by this time, it's like totally dark out. It's cold as shit, and we're all around our fire. And he comes back over eventually, and I should mention this guy's higher than a Chinese spy balloon, I think.
Bruh.
And he is like, now there's like blood all over his hand, and I'm like, bro, what the hell happened? And he's like, oh yeah, I hurt myself. He's like, man, I still couldn't get this started. And we're like cooking up, we're about to eat and everything. And so then I'm just like, oh shit, okay. So I go over there, and I just go over to the campsite really quick. And as usual, the problem was, at this point he's at least started to try and make some smaller pieces, but they were just like haphazardly thrown in there. I don't know what the hell they were doing. Like I said, I think he was just super high as well, but he managed to not only start a fire for like an hour and a half with a pretty good dose of accelerant, but also injured himself. And if you were if he was in a situation that was like shit the fan and didn't have a headlamp, didn't have his car didn't have accelerant, and he was actually had like firewood from the campsite. Now I will say that their firewood was kind of shitty. It was like mildewy and damp, and not the best, not the easiest. Because I'm pretty sure that if you had the ones from like Home Depot that are just like dry as a bone, where they like bake them, and you'd put this stuff on there, even something the size of like, I don't know, big logs still would have caught fire. But that's the thing, is most people still start way too big. Like, I always tell everyone that match flames are meant to light match sticks. And obviously you can light something bigger than that if it's really, really dry. But you don't, if you have a flame, you don't really want to be trying to light something bigger than like a pencil. And in the most extreme situations of being bone dry, certainly no bigger than like your thumb, most of the time won't light from just a match-sized flame. So you just got to start small, especially if the stuff's not bone dry. Accelerant's not going to change that. You can smear all the accelerant you want on a log that's big around, and I mean, if you douse it in gasoline or something, it's probably going to catch. But the point is, you got to start small. So I just went over there. Literally, it was like 30 seconds. All I did was I batoned off a few small pieces of one of their logs. I used a little bit of this stuff, which this stuff was useful because it sticks. I dropped it. So like, some of that fire, like powdered, crumbled stuff I tried before, and the pile will like spread out, and it's hard to put it somewhere. This stuff you can put like all in the underside of a stick, and it'll just like stay there, and then lean it in a teepee, or put it on the underside of a log or whatever you want to do. It's not gonna like fall around or move around. Lighter fluid just runs everywhere. So I was actually pretty impressed with this. I don't normally use accelerant. I try to test my skills, but I wanted to get this guy's fire started quick, so I literally went over there, started the fire in like 30 seconds, went back to our feast. And yeah, but if that was anything other than just a casual camp experience, that could be a life or death situation, not being able to get your fire started in the extreme cold, even with pretty much all the advantages. So definitely don't nap on the basic skills like that. I don't consider myself some amazing fire starting expert, but I've started a lot of fires. I've practiced to try to do it with a single match most of the time. And obviously stuff from like sparks and things like that is even more difficult. I've done that as well. The one thing I haven't done is friction fire. I've never started a fire by like a bow drill or anything like that. I have done it with magnifying glass, but never done it with the bow drill. One of these days I'll have to try that. But that's just a basic skill that you guys need to have, and probably should practice if you don't go start fires all the time, and in adverse conditions, because it's surprisingly easy to start it with bone dry wood, with no wetness, no wind, no darkness, but in the cold, kind of soggy, kind of windy, with just wood that you've and fuel that you've scavenged from around you, not from commercial firewood or something, game changer a lot of times. So I definitely don't think you should practice to start fires with a ferro rod with no commercial tinder or anything like that. But I was a fan of this stuff. It's not that heavy, and honestly I use so much the first time that you can use a lump the size of a grape and spread it out, and that worked great for most of them. So this would last a long time. While on the subject of this camping trip, I'll mention a few other things that I really liked having with me, and you guys can tell me what you guys use in these situations. And as always, links will be in the description. So one thing that I actually sell on RuleTheWasteland.com, but you can get them other places, and it comes in handy more than you would think, is this pocket bellows, which you can just open up, the other way, sorry, and you blow on the fire to stoke your fire. And you can use it for all sorts of, it's a metal tube, so you can use it to, poke around in the fire. It's not super, super strong to where you can move logs and stuff, but that comes in handy. It weighs almost nothing. They're just a hollow stainless steel tube. So it weighs almost nothing, and it comes in handy more than you would think to be able to like stoke a fire without getting your face all up in there. So, you know, maybe if you were doing a super light, ultralight backpacking, maybe you'd skip that. But for any sort of normal camping, especially car camping and stuff, I love having that with me. Use it all the time. Another one is a decent knife. In this case, I took my Cold Steel SRK. Titanium long spork. I told you about this one before. Link will be in the description. The longness comes in handy when you have the pouches of any kind. When you don't, I like this one. It's super lightweight because a lot of the sporks, the fork part of it is like useless. It's really just a spoon with kind of a serrated edge. It's just useless. This one actually has tines on it that you can actually stab things with. Actually pick up pieces of potato or meat or something with those prongs. So that one's useful. Always used my little SOG camp axe. This thing's lightweight and small. Obviously you wouldn't be felling trees with this, but for camping, splitting logs and things like that. And it also works great as a hammer for hammering in tent stakes and stuff. This is the first time I used this thing. My dad actually sent this to me. A pour over set for if you want to get fancy with your coffee. And I cleaned it up. It looks brand new, like I never used it. But make you some coffee. Obviously, again, not for super shit the fan backpacking or ultralight camping, but it has a little mechanical filter in there that you can pull out, so you don't have to use paper filters. And it was actually pretty easy to clean because that comes out. And that was kind of cool to have toasty hot coffee in the morning when it's 35 degrees or whatever. And the way I made my coffee was with the trusty old Kelly kettle. And these things there's a couple different sizes. This thing still smells like smoke. I need to clean it. But it's fantastically easy to use, and it works super well, super fast, man. Especially if you're talking about not needing to boil water. You guys have all seen the Kelly kettle before. I'm futzing with it. Link will be in the description as always. But this thing is super useful, man. Just a basic Kelly kettle with the little. So it's just a rocket stove. For those of you who don't know, that is hollow. And the water is inside the walls of this. So you can, it's the chimney of the rocket stove is the container for the water. And you can also put a pot or something on top of here with a pot holder that I have separately. So you can do multiple things at once. Heat up the water while you're either heating up more water or cooking something else. And it doesn't waste any energy because like literally all the heat from everything you're burning is going right into the walls of this and heating up the water. It's fantastic. They're a little big. Obviously, they're not particularly heavy, but kind of large, awkward shape. So it will take up a lot of space in your backpack, but man, I love this thing. If you, especially for any sort of primitive or shit the fan scenario, you know, where you're not going to be able to rely on having like a Jetboil fuel for more than a few days or weeks, or whatever, long term, you can get away with cooking your food with like literally a few twigs. It's surprising how little fuel you make. Like I probably used a bundle of twigs like that big around and, you know, 6 inches long, and to heat up water enough for coffee, which would also be pretty much the same amount to do like a Mountain House meal or something like that. So they're fantastic. I really like them. So that was my tale of rescuing someone from almost certain doom at the campgrounds. But yeah, like I said, it just, you don't think, especially being around, you know, preparedness-minded people, and even just people like my friends who are not necessarily, you know, they're not preppers, but they know how to start a freaking fire and go through some basic camping type scenarios. So it just goes to show you how ugly things can get, man, will get if you know, we're ever in a major shit the fan scenario or grid down type scenario, because this guy had like every advantage. The one disadvantage, like I said, he's probably had consumed heroic semi-fatal amounts of marijuana.
Mother of God.
So who knows how he would have done other than that. But yeah, like I said, he ended up injuring himself. Really bad scenario. And if it wasn't in such like a safe, controlled, basic environment where you have all these advantages like the lights, like the, you know, you're actually there with your car, you could leave and go to a hotel if it was an emergency or something like that, it could be bad news. And so let me know what you guys think. If you've had similar scenarios happen where you had to help people out with your skills, and what type of basic camping gear you've found has come in handy. Thanks for watching, guys. Links to all that stuff I talked about was in the description, and I'll talk to you soon.